COVID is in general actually a huge world acceleration lab for processes that meant to take years, and now actually they're happening in weeks or even months. So it's an acceleration of acceleration.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley in partnership with Leumi Tech and sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Turing, Upwest Labs, and Hillel at Stanford. We're in the world of cybersecurity, and I'm honored to have Moshe Lipsker, SVP Global Product Development at Imperva with us. Moshe is the SVP of Global Product Development and Israel General Manager at Imperva. Imperva is recognized by industry analysts as a cybersecurity leader. Moshe joined Imperva in 2018 as Data Security Vice President Engineering and has held a variety of leadership roles. Prior to joining Imperva, Moshe was Vice President Engineering at Cellebrite and held executive positions at Polycom. Moshe earned Bachelor's degree in Computer Science from Bar-Ilan University and Executive MBA from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Moshe Lipsker, thank you for joining me on 20-Minute Leaders. How are you today?
I'm okay. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
I'm honored to have you here. I'm honored to have an opportunity to talk to you about your journey in particularly cybersecurity, and all the way from Cellebrite to Imperva today being the general manager and senior vice president of global product development. I'm gonna talk to you about innovation in a big corporate. I want to talk to you about innovation at scale when you're managing 500 people here in Israel, but 1,400 people worldwide. But even before that, I want to talk about cybersecurity, something that we in Israel understand, particularly through innovation, through necessity. But I'd love to first start, high level. What is it? Why is it important? And what's been happening through COVID? Moshe, take me all the way back to your infantry days in the army. You don't come from a cybersecurity background. How do you get into this crazy world?
Okay, so in the Israeli cyber arena, if you don't come from one of the elite tech units, you don't count.
Right?
So I did not came from these elite tech units, but I did came from one of the elite combat units. So unlike my colleagues I was in the infantry special forces, and I assume that my background, special forces plus commanding, brought me to the position where my managerial and leadership capabilities are reflected very well in my day-to-day job. So this is the background of how it had come about.
And so you go into the world of cybersecurity
and
a little bit overview.
Yeah. So I'll give a background about Imperva and then talk about cyber and the COVID.
Of course.
So Imperva is one of the biggest cybersecurity players in the world, as I assume know. Our product portfolio is a combination of application security and data security, where the application security products around WAF, Web Application Firewall, DDoS, distribution denial of service, bot protection, routes, etc. And data security products are around data breach prevention, which we see a lot over the last months and year. Imperva footprint is in the cloud, in the on-prem and hybrid environments all over. The company evaluation is, in terms of size, is $2+ billion. The annual revenue is hundreds of millions. So we're big. And in terms of company size, we're around 1,400 employees over the globe and 500 in R&D, which are distributed in 10 sites around the globe: Israel, North America, and EMEA. So going to the cyber trends in the COVID. So COVID is in general actually a huge world acceleration lab for processes that meant to take years, and now actually they're happening in weeks or even months. So it's an acceleration of acceleration. So I'll give you an example. A very simple one. The move from physical to virtual. It can be related to work environments, the move to work remotely from home. Without COVID, it would have taken years, right? And now, no one is gonna work 100% in a classic pre-COVID office.
Never.
We're
Right.
moving to a home offices in a hybrid environment. Never, right? So, in a more advanced example is the move from on-premises to the cloud. For companies that are not native born in the cloud, you can see a good example in some market segments, such as financial organizations, banks, insurance, etc., which it would have been taken them years to transform the organizational workload to the cloud from data centers. But and they defined such strategy for them, but it would have taken years, and now it's taking months, even less, even weeks.
Right.
Everyone is blowing into the cloud, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because no physical footprint for these companies. So as a result, the speed to the cloud or to the virtual domain is actually, it creates tons of cyber opportunities for hackers, actually cyber exploits that they can take advantage of. And this is a very crazy world that we're entering into. And I'm not sure that the population understands what's happening at the moment in the cyber arena.
Give me a rundown.
So yeah. So there is a clearly a trajectory of attackers which are increasing dramatically over 2020. So the last COVID year. So a very simple example is the last attack of the supply chain of FireEye via SolarWinds. Are you familiar with that? That
Mm-hmm.
actually FireEye, the company that is supplying for North America, multiple companies, including the DoD of America, right? And
Right.
SolarWinds, and this was in the press. It's a public.
Yep.
And actually SolarWinds, which provided the product, which is called Orion, was hacked. So actually SolarWinds was hacked in FireEye that is distributed in multiple companies in North America. So this is a very sophisticated, complex attack that took place. And it, by the way, at that sense, to be part of the cyber world, when I'm on the side, or we are on the side of the good guys, is something very meaningful for me in person. But anyhow, bottom line, the trend of acceleration to the cloud is creating opportunities to attackers and for the cyber vendors to bridge these gaps. A very good fact that can validate my statement is the fact that the cyber industry growth globally year over year was double digit in 2020, which means that there is a war there outside, and there are all these companies that are trying to bridge the gaps of this offense defense play, right?
Right.
So this is the main situation that we're seeing, and companies like Imperva or others are trying to help as much as they can organizations to secure the world.
So one thing that I wanted to pick your brain on, Moshe, is I've been hearing, some people, not a lot, but some people that are saying, no, cybersecurity is a bubble, it's overpriced, and you have companies that, they're pretty much doing the same thing at crazy valuations, and that the market is not really there, and if it is there, it's not going to be there in 5 to 10 years. I personally don't agree with that opinion. I think that I'm on pretty much the opposite spectrum in this cat and mouse game. But I'd love to hear your take on where are we actually headed in terms of the cybersecurity market, in terms of how technology is advancing, and are we going to keep seeing a lot of these fragmented solutions? Do you expect we're going to be converging to some market leaders that are going to dominate the market? How do you see the cybersecurity world moving forward?
So you talked about the move from cybersecurity to big data, and it's very related in machine learning and artificial intelligence. So actually, the trends in the world is moving to big data, and all this information collection is creating a spectrum where data is enabling artificial intelligence for cyber security vendors. For example, bot protection. Let's take our bot protection product, or things that are related to data. You see an automation attack that someone is trying to scrap your website, or scrap one of the biggest websites in the world by automation bot attacks. Now, the way we can address this attack or mitigate the problem is by collecting all these data, creating artificial intelligence on top of that, and analytics, and react as a response or as a mitigation. So the way we can improve ourselves is by big data. In addition to that, the fact that data is gold today, and the main assets of organizations are around are around data. So
Right.
all these data breaches are the way for hackers to create ransomware operations, and they take customer data. So you need to protect that, right?
Right.
And even if those hackers are, and these hackers are not personal private people, they're organized in crime organizations, which they're trying to get data not only from ransomware, but for to actually run some algorithms from themselves
Right.
on top of this data. So data is king, and data is the main trajectory for cyber security in the future.
So what I'm hearing from you, Moshe, is that looking at data as the thing to protect, and in that same game, it is the thing to steal. So it's not it's not bank robbery. It's not going in and physically taking things. It's not stealing necessarily even the technology. It's stealing data. And in that regard, as we see that data is exploding, and obviously we've seen since 2016 the numerous case studies on how our data is being stored immensely throughout all these fragmented companies. Then what I'm hearing from you really is that we're just starting. We're just scratching the surface of this big cat and mouse game.
Absolutely.
Well, so
Absolutely.
it's something both exciting
We're
and
just
scary.
starting. It's very exciting. It's a beginning of a new era, which we will see more machine learning, more artificial intelligence getting into this cyber space, and it looks like the sky is the limit for both sides, for the attackers and the defenders, right?
Right.
But it's fascinating, and it's something that I didn't have the opportunity so far to be part of in such scales.
I love it, and I think that Moshe, this is a perfect segue to the just a meaningful question. In this cat and mouse game that we're describing here, and so far we've really talked about the defensive side, and how COVID has accelerated things, and how data is taking over the world. Software is eating the world, through the words of the wise Mark Andreessen. And with that, we talk about this marvelous cat and mouse game between the red team and the blue team. Imperva, obviously the blue team, but really you exist because there's a phenomenal red team that inevitably is going to be one step ahead, because they are the ones that are breaking the rules, and then you're building on top of that. Hopefully, obviously there are efforts to mitigate that, but that is the nature of the game. And in order to keep up and in order to win, you need to innovate constantly with 1,400 people, with 500 in R&D. So talk to me a little bit about, organization, corporate innovation, and how, as a senior vice president and general manager of the Israeli branch, how do you lead, hundreds of people through this mission of innovation?
Okay, so this is a huge challenge, by the way. It's not an easy one, but the way to address this huge challenge is by creating value, value to the organization, from my perspective, in 4 dimensions. It's downing on operational. It's emphasizing on platform play, then innovation, and then the personal leadership touch. So I'll try to pinpoint and to drill down to each one of them. So the operational side, the way to operate in this such a scale is actually to transform from a giant carrier to speedboats. So instead of maintaining one big organization of 500 and manage all these dependencies at once, what I'm trying to do, or we are trying to do, is we're trying to treat it in a way you treat a complex problem. So how do you actually treat complex problems? You need to break it to small, manageable sub-challenges, and actually you need to create, for example, 25 groups of 20 people instead of one per 500, right? So first thing you need to do is to decouple the dependencies between all these speedboats. Once you define what are the speedboats, in order to provide a level of autonomy each one needs, this is a key.
Right.
And then you actually become, as a leader, enabler of for teams to for successful deliveries. And the challenge is to deliver all these products in parallel and keep the core expertise simultaneously with the ability to leverage the competence of a big organization. Because if you decouple to 25 speedboats, so it's like 25 startups. So where is the leverage between them, and how do you actually use the competence of the big organization? So the answer for that is we're working in Imperva in the engineering in a matrix, which we called it guilds and gangs or guilds and squads. It's not new. Spotify is working like that. Wix is working like that. Multiple companies. Guilds are responsible of expertise, and gangs or squads are responsible for the delivering the products. And in terms of our roles and responsibilities, the professional guilds are responsible for the how, and the delivery gangs are responsible for the why, what, and when. And after the creation of this type of organization, you can emphasize within these groups to the market business and the actual value prop to the customer. So you need to create the structure, enable it, and be an enabler for the structure, and then push the speedboats to success and to deliver this value proposition to the customers. So you need to, the question is now, how do you leverage between all these speedboats the core capabilities of the entire organization? So the answer for that is the second dimension, which is platform play. Platform play, from my perspective, is you develop once, you leverage and reuse multiple times. So you need to transfer the DNA and culture of the organization in a way those teams are not reinventing the wheels again and again. It's not 25 groups, for the example, that are reinventing the wheels in a silo. They need to have a collaboration between them. And actually, this platform play is creating a growth engine for the entire organization. So that's how you can leverage the competence of a big organization. And once you have this structure and the platform play, you need in parallel to create this innovation. So how do you innovate in that area? Because this is the question. I'm trying to answer a question in a very long way, but this I think it's thorough enough to provide the answer. So on top of the operational efficiency, aka speedboats, and the platform play that are leveraging the core capabilities that I spoke, you need to innovate by incubation of ideas that can disrupt the market, because otherwise somehow someone else will do it instead of you. So if we will not innovate enough, it will be we will become a stagnated organization, and we will not grow. So we created on top of that, or aside of that, an incubation. We call it incubation, acceleration, whatever. But the idea here is to have another startup, and this is a very siloed startup, which is running like hell, analyzing the market, understanding the market trends, think like a startup, talk like a startup, detach from the mothership, and actually trying to create the collaboration of all the brains that we can get into, and we have lots of brains. So this innovation incubation is actually helping us. So you need to structure the organization and run the operation, and create a sidekick of an innovation incubation organization. And the last dimension is related to, and this is not related to the question of innovation, but it's related to leadership in big organizations. So I believe in leadership by keeping the human personal touch, and I'm investing a lot of my time in one-on-ones. I learned it from the Army, from the IDF. But if you create this personal touch, 360 with all people up, aside, and below, I don't mean only your subordinates, but skip level of N-1, N-2, as much as you can, and create this personal connection, you can actually influence the organization to do all this operation that I described. So it's a big challenge, but it's doable.
And it sounds like a very fun and phenomenal challenge and I appreciate sharing all the insights. And I think that corporate innovation is something that I've been extremely curious about as I've gotten to talk to some really fantastic people working for these great companies. And then the question stems, okay, well, in an emerging world where you have so many different startups trying to solve so many of the different problems that also corporates are solving, what are the pros and cons, and who has the competitive advantage? And until now, people are saying that yes, obviously a small startup, a squad of great engineers has an advantage over a big corporate that is trying to to walk while the startup is running. But now you have this wave of understanding that actually you can still run in a big company, you can still innovate and still run. Moshe, thank you so much for your time and for spending these 20 minutes with me. I really appreciate it. The last question, and the most important one, is 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Okay, so actually I put it under my signature. It's think big, start small, and move fast.
I love it. Moshe, toda rabba. Thank you very, very much. Best of luck with Imperva. It was wonderful. Thank you for being the good guys, and I can't wait to keep in touch.